This Sunday, fighting ISIS. How do we defeat them? What should the U.S. strategy be? And how safe are we at home? We'll talk to the experts, including Homeland Security Chief Jay Johnson and former Defense Secretary and head of the CIA, Leon Panetta, on what needs to be done. Plus, a bad week for American leadership. President Obama sounds defensive,
I don't know what more you want me to add.
while the Republicans go over the top on refugees.
But I would encourage you, Mr. President, come back and insult me to my face.
I want surveillance of these people that are coming in.
How will the ISIS threat and the politics of fear impact the 2016 campaign? Also, Syrian refugees and America. Are there legitimate reasons to slow the process, or is this just Islamophobia? And joining me for insight and analysis are Tom Brokaw of NBC News, Kathleen Parker of The Washington Post, Pauline Cooper of The New York Times, and Ron Fournier of The National Journal. Welcome to Sunday and a special edition of Meet the Press.
From NBC News in Washington, this is a special edition of Meet the Press.
Much more on how we confront ISIS coming up. Politics of fear. How do we remain safe and still not give in to Islamophobia?
I want surveillance of these people that are coming in. The Trojan horse, I want to know who the hell they are.
Welcome back. The attacks in Paris have shifted the focus of the campaign, at least temporarily, from the economy to terrorism. And while President Obama's response to the Paris attacks was roundly criticized for being a bit tone-deaf and dispassionate, the Republican presidential candidates have been playing on the politics of fear in an extraordinary way.
Database is okay, and watch list is okay, and surveillance is okay. If you don't mind, I want surveillance of these people that are coming in. I want surveillance of certain mosques, okay? If that's okay. I want surveillance. And you know what? We've had it before and we'll have it again.
Those planes that flew into the Twin Towers weren't piloted by a bunch of ticked-off Presbyterians.
If there's a rabid dog running around your neighborhood, you're probably not going to assume something good about that dog, and you're probably going to put your children out of the way. Doesn't mean that you hate all dogs.
The politics of fear can be effective politically, but when does tough rhetoric turn into Islamophobia? That's the discussion we're going to have right after the break.
Meet the Press is brought to you by Morgan Stanley, where capital creates change.
Welcome back. We're going to talk about whether the political response to the ISIS attacks has boiled over into Islamophobia. To have that conversation, I'm also joined by Arsalan Iftikhar. He's a human rights lawyer and a senior editor of the Islamic Monthly, who is also writing a book about Islamophobia in America. The panel is also back as well. Arsalan, has this week been, how tough has it been to be a Muslim American this week?
Well, Chuck, in the 7 days since the Paris attacks, we've seen mosques attack here in the United States. In Omaha, Nebraska, Pflugerville, Texas, there was a 43-year-old man in St. Petersburg, Florida, who was arrested by the FBI for saying that he's going to shoot and kill every single Muslim child that he sees. And Southwest Airlines actually had 2 or 3 flights where Muslims were taken off of the flights simply because they were Muslim. And so it's pretty much been par for the course since September 11th.
I want to play, we've seen all the Republican rhetoric this time. I want to play for sort of a comparison, what you've heard today from some of these Republican presidential candidates and what we heard from the last Republican president on the issue of Islam. Here it is.
I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering.
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
That would be like saying we weren't at war with Nazis because we were afraid to offend some Germans who may have been members of the Nazi Party but weren't violent themselves. This is a clash of civilizations.
When it comes to the common rights and needs of men and women, there is no clash of civilizations.
If there's a rabid dog running around your neighborhood, you're probably not going to assume something good about that dog.
And we respect the faith
and we welcome people of all faiths in America. And we're not going to let the war on terror or terrorists cause us to change our values.
Arsalan, what did the Bush White House do behind the scenes to make sure they got this right?
Well, I think, what George W. Bush said after 9/11 in terms of showing solidarity with American Muslims, sadly, he'd be considered an outcast in today's 2015 Republican Party. I mean, we see people like Donald Trump saying that we should have a database of all American Muslims. I wonder if the two Muslim members of Congress, my buddy Keith Ellison and Andre Carson, would they be in that database? Would Muhammad Ali, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, funniest guy in America, Dave Chappelle? We talk about special IDs for Muslims. Would that be similar to the yellow stars of David that many Jewish people have to wear in Nazi Germany? Would it be a yellow crescent this time?
Would it be helpful if some Muslim community leaders got together with these candidates, actually requested a sit down to have a conversation, to tone down the rhetoric, ask them specifically to tone down the rhetoric? And has anything like that taken place that you know of?
Kathleen, during the 2008 presidential campaign, when there were whisper campaigns going around of Barack Obama being some sort of crypto-Muslim-Manchurian candidate, you didn't see anybody, speak out against that until Colin Powell actually came on this show to tell his fellow Republicans to shut the hell up. We need allies from outside of the community. We need people, to speak on the behalf of American principles of tolerance and pluralism. People expect Muslims to speak out, but it's important for allies to speak out as well.
Of course, I agree with. I agree with that. I was just simply thinking that if you put those people on the spot, if they refuse to sit down and have a conversation, that's one statement unto itself.
Almost like a forum.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
exactly.
a public forum.
A public forum.
Well, I wonder if this forum will take place in, these American Muslim internment camps, which I'm sure is going to be the next step in the
maybe right here.
The rhetoric. And I hope you'll all come visit me in these internment camps, because it's getting absurd. I mean, it's absolutely, beyond the pale that, when Ben Carson says that Muslims should not be allowed to be president, he clearly hasn't, read the religious test clause of the Constitution. And so in many cases, not only should these people not be allowed to run for president, they should retroactively fail 8th grade social studies for not knowing the Constitution.
Another public forum is Twitter, and you ask on your Twitter feed, I think just yesterday, why is it that so many people put the French flag in their avatar, but very few people put the flag of an African Mali in their Twitter feed? You answer that question. Why do you think so few people have rallied behind Mali in that public of a way?
I mean, I think that race has a lot to do with it. I mean, you have a black, predominantly Muslim country in Mali, which is 92% Muslim, and then you have a white European country like France. Obviously, we're horrified at, the Paris terrorist attacks, but there are terrorist attacks that occur every single day. Let's not forget, in the same week as the Paris terrorist attacks, there were suicide bombings by ISIS in Beirut, Lebanon, in Baghdad, Iraq, but we never saw any sort of, moral
Don't forget
outrage.
Nigeria.
And Nigeria as well.
Is it simply racism, though? I, for one, had the French flag. I didn't even think of putting the Mali flag in my avatar. What does it say about me?
I have to give Facebook credit here, because Facebook created a photo tool for the people of France. It made it a lot easier. But again, we have to have these conversations. But what's most important is that we're letting this talk by these Republican presidential frontrunners go unchallenged. When Ben Carson refers to refugees as rabid dogs, and Donald Trump talks about these people, and I'm going to surveil people, and I'm going to make them have special IDs and databases, and people are cheering. When they don't see any pushback, any meaningful pushback, it allows it, to go unchallenged.
Well, the other thing that I think that happens within the Republican Party, apart from those who are running for president, there's been no voice on that side to challenge their own presidential candidates. And the president, I think, has made a mistake by just saying, we know what we're doing, trust us, when actually there's palpable fear out there. He ought to engage the American people in a dialogue that goes beyond just some kind of a statement from far off Asia when he's talking about what we can do.
I think, though, that there's also a responsibility in the news media to make sure that we're covering these events, we're covering this stuff the way it is happening. For instance, there is still no link between Syrian refugees and the attack in Paris, okay? Nobody is out, these guys are Belgian and French nationals. They're not Syrian refugees. We don't have a link to that yet. And yet all of this rhetoric, I would love to see the press, and I'd like to see the media.
It's an untested passport. There's a rumor of a passport. That was it.
That's it.
Right.
Well, I agree. Listen, when Donald Trump talks about security, or Ben Carson, we're talking about 3-year-old orphans who are orphans and refugees because of American policy.
Yes.
Excuse me, but this week is a reflection of how our leaders are going to respond to the next 9/11, I really think that we're one major hit away from a national unraveling. And I think of Bill Clinton, who talked about at times of insecurity, people would rather have a leader who is wrong and strong than right and weak. Well, we have a lot of leaders right now, especially on the right side of the paradigm, who are very trying to pretend that they're strong, and they're very, very wrong.
Arsalan, I want to give you the last word.
You know, it's important to keep in mind, there was a recent poll that happened in Iowa amongst Republican registered voters, which showed that 33% of Iowa Republicans believe that Islam should be illegal in America today, against the law. We still have 50.
So how do we change this? I mean, public opinion, overall, 56% of Americans say it doesn't match American values. So is it education campaign?
Re-education.
We need leaders.
Yeah, well, and
adults.
let's not forget 59% of Americans today believe that Barack Obama is still a Muslim. I feel like Jerry Seinfeld needs to pop out and say, not that there's anything wrong with that. You know, Muslim has become a slur in America today.
It is. Well, Arsalan Iftikhar, thanks for coming.
My
good
pleasure.
to see you.
Always good
Had
to be
you on the
here.
show
Thanks,
before.
Chuck.
We'll have you again. Appreciate it. We're going to have more of this conversation, I promise you guys. When we come back, though, how much do we have to fear about ISIS using the Syrian refugee crisis to slip terrorists in the United States? The holes in our defense are not refugees. It's visas. I'll explain.